And in the studio with me is Mike Ejiofor, who is a former director of the Department of State Services. And joining us live from the United Kingdom, London precisely, is Bulama Bukarti, a security analyst, to help us dissect the issues surrounding the resurgence of insurgents in Nigeria, where abductions of close to 400 Nigerians, mainly students and some villagers in Kwara State, have occurred in the last 1 week. Let me start with you, Bulama, in far away London there. I mean, when you hear these kidnappings or the resurgence of the terrorists and the mayhem they continue to unleash on Nigeria, what are your thoughts and that of the international community, particularly when, you underscore it with the U.S. president's threat to descend heavily on terrorists in Nigeria and not Nigeria as a country?
Christian, very nice to see you, Sir Mike, again. You see, it's very, very sad to see the next this spate of attack in our country. Unfortunately, over the past 7 days, there have been about 12 attacks in which over 400 people have been abducted in about 8 states and around 20 people have been killed. And it's very, very sad. When we say this is a resurgence, in my mind, it's not actually a resurgence. It is just around this period that every time we see an increase in attacks, especially for the terrorists and criminal gangs operating in the Northwest and the Northeast, the rainy season is always difficult for them to operate, especially the rainy season in the North, which takes 5 months, and it is now over. And the jungles therefore have cleared and the access roads for them have started opening again, and therefore they start relaunching these kinds of attacks. And the sheer scale of attack, one in the Northeast in which a military general was killed, General Musa Uba, another in the Northwest where 25 students were abducted, and also an attack in Zamfara in the Northwest where about 79 women were abducted in Maru and Safe local government areas of Zamfara state. And then you have another around 600 kilometers from there where you had the community in Kwara, where a church was attacked, 2 people or 3 were killed, and about 35 or 30 people abducted. And then you have this one in Niger State. Now, this tells you that Nigeria is no longer dealing with a single security threat or insurgency as we saw 10 years ago. What we are dealing with right now are multiple distinct actors who are always splitting or splintering and rebranding, and therefore becoming a bigger threat. And that is what happens if you allow insecurity to fester for a long time in the country. Every time there was a ransom paid, that gives them more money to stock more weapons and equipment. Every attack they launch gives them more experience. And every time the government did not act in the way it should act, groups will splinter. One commander will form his own and another will form their own. And you will see the kind of cross-state operations we are seeing currently in different parts of Nigeria. President Trump's, like you said, President Trump's threat was to launch attack in Nigeria on the terrorist groups. But what is worrying about his threat was that he wanted to do it unilaterally. And if he did that unilaterally, that will be counterproductive. You have to work with the Nigerian government if you want to help Nigeria. And President Trump's continued claim of a Christian genocide ignores the suffering of the Muslim community. And I think it is a gross misrepresentation of actually what is happening in Nigeria. Christians are being attacked, they are being killed, and it is sad. But Muslims are equally attacked, or even so far more. And that is also not acceptable. And I think if the United States wants to help Nigeria, it should understand that these terrorists, their war is against Nigeria, not a specific faith. And the only way forward is to unite Nigerians, Muslims and Christians, Southerners and Northerners, and so that we can face our common enemy, the terrorists and criminal gangs wreaking havoc in our country.
All right, thank you very much, Bulama. You've raised some very critical points there, issues noteworthy. But let me come back home here and ask Mike Ejiofor, has Nigeria truly allowed terrorism to fester, that it has now become gangrenous to the entire country? Mike?
I don't think so. The background that Bulama gave, was very apt. You look at this period of the year, festive end of year, Christmas coming up, and the dry season, the attacks tend to rise, and besides, you can see that it was even compounded by the statement made by President Trump that he was going to fish out and attack the bandits wherever they are. And in their ignorance, the bandits think that attack is directed to Nigeria and not only not them alone. So they have now decided to up their game by attacking several places. With this coordination, it's not just coincidence that the attacks are going on in several places at the same time. And you recall what was being played out in 2014, 2015, when people were talking about making the country, if Jonathan had taken over power, if he had won the election. So what I see now is a rehash of that episode where you try to make the country ungovernable, destabilize the government.
You're bringing in some political tones
exactly.
Here now, right?
Yes. So that again bring government to public odium and disrepute. So I think it's a combination of both political, ideological, and ethnic, ethno-religious,
So it will temper the kind of nomenclature that the former late head of state was often, associated with in his quotes, that if an insurgency lasts for more than 24 hours, that means the government has a hand in it. And we're hearing the Minister of Information in Nigeria saying that prosecuting terrorism financiers is more complex than just giving us even the list of those financiers. Bulama, what are your thoughts here? Is it so difficult?
You see, it is not just about the finances. The finance is one of it, but I can list about 5 main factors that are leading to the situation we are witnessing today, unfortunately, in our country. The first is that the Nigerian government has woefully failed to choke off the finance out of these groups. Today, terrorism, the kidnap for ransom industry, is the most lucrative industry in Nigeria, maybe only second to the oil industry. It is only in the kidnap for ransom industry that people who did not invest anything will abduct huge numbers of Nigerians, keep them for 2-3 weeks, 5 weeks, and they extort hundreds of millions of naira from the families or from governments. No one makes that kind of profit in Nigeria. And unfortunately, unless and until you make it unviable, you take the profit out of the industry, this situation will continue. But it is not just inability to choke off the finance. It is also our inability to take down their logistics and supply routes, because the arms, the drugs, even the food, the fuel they use in the bush is not produced in the bush. They don't grow their fuel or their food or whatever. They import them from other countries, or they buy them from our own markets and take them into the jungles. Why has the government failed to tackle that? It is not only that, you also need to look at the fact that in the last 10 years, there was not a time when a major terrorist leader aside of Halilu Sububu, where a major terrorist leader was killed or was arrested, investigated, and prosecuted. Now, also, if you look at the recent attacks, Christian, you will see that in each attack, the survivors will tell you that we reported this matter days ago or weeks ago that there was going to be an attack, but no one stopped it. It is not that our military doesn't want to stop it, and we don't have huge problem with our intel. Our intelligence agencies are doing very well. The communities are doing very well to give information. What is happening is that Nigeria has a very weak or limited capacity to respond. We do not have a good rapid response system. We do not have a good rapid reinforcement system or mechanism. And because of that, only hours or even days after an attack had already been launched and completed, you will see our soldiers arriving. Where you have only 20 soldiers or 30, the matter may be reported to them, but the gangs have come in 300, 200, 350. How do you expect 20 or 30 soldiers to face them? We have got to enhance our rapid response and rapid reinforcement mechanisms. Otherwise, it will continue, and with every attack, Nigerians' trust in government is dying because people are saying we reported, but nothing was done.
Thank you very much, Bulama. Let me come to you, Ejiofor. You're a former, detective, state, security, police, and the rest. And we're talking about ransom payments here. Huge millions. The abductees from Kwara, they are demanding 100 million naira each on each person abducted. And this huge money, how does it get to the terrorists without traces from the bank, security agencies, tracking devices, and the rest? Is that not why people say government is complicit, Mike?
Well, you see, it's difficult to say that government is complicit because each time these releases are made of these victims, you see them dressed, and government comes out to tell you they didn't pay anything, and the victims' relations.
And they can't track the monies coming from the bank. That's humongous amount. We're talking of millions, hundreds of millions.
I think that's where we should concentrate our efforts.
So where are the security agencies? What is the SSS doing?
If you recall that when the central bank governor, Emefiele, was in office, his wife was kidnapped, and the money was tracked, which led to the arrest of those people. So I think we should concentrate efforts. This is we are talking of. I'm not part of, but I can't see how people will carry in naira in cash hundreds of millions, and you're talking of hundreds of millions, and carrying them. So there could be other ways of transferring this money. I don't know. But the best practices, and the government continues to maintain that they don't encourage payment of ransom, and we take whatever the government has said. But the most important thing for me as a person, as a concerned Nigerian, is that we should hasten to ensure that all these people, especially these school girls and all the pupils taken away from the school, are returned safely, no matter how, because if it happens to you, unless it doesn't happen to you, one cannot take it very seriously.
Yeah, you've been a kidnapped victim before, yes, somewhere along Lokoja or Kenero. But Bulama, let us look at the sheer number of the pupils adopted in the Catholic school in Piliri. 315. How are they ferried? Isn't this organized crime?
It is clearly organized crime, Christian. Unfortunately, this is the 13th mass kidnapping of school students in Nigeria. And in those 13 incidents, over 2,000 Nigerian students have been taken. Christian, only in Nigeria, you have never had, even in comic books, even in fairy tales, nowhere could you see criminals, terrorist gangs, walking into a school and taking the whole student body and just disappearing into thin air. Only in Nigeria this happens. And it's because the Chibok kidnapping happened, And I mean, governments may say no, but there are credible reporting saying the Buhari administration paid about 300 million euros. I mean, sorry, 3 million euros for the release of the 81 Chibok girls that were released. And all in all, millions of dollars or euros were paid to Boko Haram to release the Chibok girls, the 101 or so Chibok girls that were released. And from the Chibok incident, criminal and terrorist gangs in Nigeria discovered that, oh, we can make money from targeting students. And of course, we know that they are increasingly targeting the softest targets they can find. And you couldn't find a softer target than a primary school pupil between the ages of 6 and 12. Now terrorists walk into the schools, and from each of the incidents we have witnessed in Nigeria, they would say they either carried them on motorcycles or in pickup trucks, or sometimes they make them to walk for days. And in this specific incident you are talking about, in the students, they were first carried in a truck, and later the reports say they were disembarked from the truck, they were removed from the trucks, and they were made to trek. They trekked into jungles. And the Nigerian security forces are still approaching this war as a conventional war. They are still using heavy machinery that cannot go into the jungles where these guys are operating. They are operating, Christian, they are operating with motorcycles for a reason. Those motorcycles are strong, they are fast, and the terrorists and the criminal gangs know the terrain very well. But while the Nigerian security forces are still using heavy machineries that get stuck in the mud as soon as they start entering the jungle. And in many places, there are no access roads. So we have to change our war philosophy from conventional warfare to a guerrilla warfare if we want to tackle these groups. The only way to fight them is to take the war to them. We should not continue to be waiting for them to launch attacks on schools and markets and communities, and then we are always in the defense. The best defense is to attack. Currently, we are not attacking them, we are defending.
Let me quickly ask both of you, but I want you to just stay on. The federal government, you know, you've heard of the Save School project. Close to 600 billion naira was budgeted for the Safe School project. And it doesn't seem to be working if close to 350 students in just 1 week, less than a fortnight ago, have been kidnapped. Another, you know, financial jamboree, embezzlement, you want to call that, the money not getting to the appropriate quarters. Bulama?
Yeah, so I mean, Christian, the Safe School initiative launched after the Chibok kidnapping about 11 years ago was never going to work, because the idea was to isolate schools and fortify them or protect them while criminality and terrorism festers in the rest of the community. That's not going to happen. It is like you saying you want to separate one part of your body or one organ in your body and protect it from cancer while cancer is ravaging the rest of the body. It's not going to work. And just take a look at it. If there are 300 terrorists attacking a school, you need between 200 to 250 security forces to be able to protect that school. And if you want to deploy 250 to 300 soldiers to each school in Nigeria, you will need hundreds of thousands of security forces, which we do not have to deploy, but you also need to deploy them with cars, you need to deploy them with other stuff, you need to deploy them with protective equipment, and you need a building where they would stay, or at least a structure where they would stay. It's never going to work. The only way you can protect schools is after you have protected the whole of the community, after you have protected the whole country. And until today, we do not have a nationwide strategy that is consistent, that every state government has bought into, that the federal government is implementing together with the states. Today, the governor of Zamfara state is doing one thing. Tomorrow, the governor of Katsina is doing another. Today, the federal government is doing this. Tomorrow is doing another. Your policy is inconsistent and sometimes contradictory. And there is no way you can keep a country safe if the policy in the country is not consistent and if different actors are implementing different solutions that are inconsistent.
Bulama, Mike, very quickly. I mean, the 600, about 600 billion naira safe school project and the rest. Is that a panacea to, safeguard the students in their learning environment?
Well, just like Bulama said, the project, the initiative took off, but didn't work because we cannot pin our hands now on any particular project that was executed on this safe school initiative. So I think what we should concentrate our efforts now on is how to protect these schools through communal efforts, getting vigilante. But like Bulama said, these people move in hundreds. So how are you going to deploy over 100 unarmed people with people against people who carry sophisticated weapons? So it becomes a problem. Now, I think the initiative already taken by the federal government is commendable, where the NSA has led a delegation to the United States to at least discuss ways, because when these people are moving before they are attacked, and we have drones monitor, the only problem I have with the US president, he said that he's going to do it on his own to fish out the terrorists. You can't do it. Nigeria is a sovereign country. What I think he should do is negotiate with them, see how we can collaborate, so that if these people are moving from one particular, before they get to any community, they're seen and possibly a strike, because I don't think we have that capacity now. If we have that capacity, we might have the intelligence that these people are going to strike. Nobody knows the exact time they are going to strike, the exact location they are going to strike. But if we deploy technology to monitor and see all these areas that are vulnerable, I think the best thing is to strike before they move into the communities.
Well, thank you so very much, gentlemen, for coming to add some verve to Newsnight on the security situation in Nigeria as it unfolds with the almost 400 Nigerians, pupils, students of primary and secondary schools being kidnapped, and that has led to the shutdown. Mike Ejiofor is a former director of the Department of State Services, and Bulama Bukarti, he joined us from London, is a security analyst. Thanks once again, gentlemen.